In the vast Pacific Ocean, a tiny spot of land is again making headlines worldwide. In a bankruptcy court document, there's a surprising plan. A company and its billionaire owner wanted to buy their own country, Nauru. Their scheme, sounding like something out of a movie, included using the island for their gain and building a lab for genetic experiments, plus a super bunker for surviving a disaster. In 1980, Nauru was the wealthiest country globally, yet by 2017, it was listed among the 5 poorest nations. This is a chronicle of a nation's journey from prosperity to poverty and back again. It's a reminder of the consequences that can arise when a country exhausts its natural resources without considering the welfare of its populace. So, how did this tiny island become the wealthiest country, only to lose it all, maybe even the land itself? That's the wild story of Nauru we're getting into. From riches to ruin. Nauru isn't just interesting because it's remote, it's also in a tough spot. Life there has been challenging for about 20 years. A lot of people are poor, and unemployment used to be crazy high. The island's falling apart, with old homes, bad roads, and trash everywhere. And because they mostly eat processed food, health problems like diabetes and obesity are widespread. It's so bad that moving everyone off the island is being talked about seriously. But it was sometimes different from this. Less than 50 years ago, Nauru was unbelievably rich. In the 1970s, the average person there had way more money than the average American. They had fancy cars and big solar-powered houses and even flew to other countries for shopping trips. People had so much money, they sometimes didn't even bother with minor changes. It was a time when working wasn't even necessary for many. Nauru's turbulent transformation. Let's take a trip back to 1830 when a ship called the John Bull vanished under mysterious circumstances. It was last seen near Norfolk Island, an isolated spot nearly 900 miles off the coast of Australia. Norfolk Island wasn't exactly a vacation destination. It was a brutal penal colony where England sent its most brutal criminals. Among them was an Irish convict named John Jones, who decided to run for it along with a group of fellow prisoners. They took over the ship in a bold escape attempt. Their journey took them over 2,000 miles into the Pacific Ocean, but it wasn't the adventure they'd hoped for. As their food ran out, most of the crew met a grim end, with Jones and his friend Patrick Burke resorting to desperate measures to survive. Eventually, they washed ashore on an island that ironically went by the name Pleasant Island. But despite its name, life on this little 8-square-mile atoll was a different walk in the park. It had been home to about 1,400 people for thousands of years. These people lived along the coast, where coconut trees provided shade and food. The island's main feature, a high plateau called Topside, was covered in thick forests that gave the locals wild almonds and breadfruit. Life might sound idyllic so far, but it wasn't all sunshine and coconuts. Droughts were common, making water scarce, and the ocean around the island was full of dangerous currents. Plus, tensions among the island's 12 clans sometimes led to conflicts, though they usually managed to keep the peace. Things started to change when Europeans arrived. John Jones, the runaway convict, managed to fit in by helping the locals trade with passing European ships. But his arrival also brought trouble. He introduced guns and alcohol to the island, which upset the delicate balance of life there. By 1878, things had gotten terrible. A big fight broke out among the islanders, turning into a 10-year civil war. The German Empire saw this chaos as a chance to step in. They kidnapped the local chiefs and took almost 800 rifles from the islanders. Soon after, Germany took control of the island, naming it Nauru. So, what started as a daring escape attempt changed the course of history for this little island. Life on Nauru was far from pleasant, and it was about to take an even darker turn. Nauru's Phosphate Bonanza. In 1899, a guy named Albert Ellis noticed something odd in the Sydney office of the Pacific Islands Company, a rock used as a doorstop. It turned out that it wasn't just any rock but fossilized wood from Nauru. After a closer look, they realized it was phosphate ore, super high-quality stuff. See, over millions of years, birds had been dropping loads of poop on Nauru, and that poop turned into valuable phosphate. So, the company got busy negotiating with the German government to start mining. And once they got the green light, things moved fast. They cleared the land, scooped out the phosphate rock, and left behind a big mess. By the early 1920s, they exported tons of the stuff yearly, but Nauru needed to be in control of its destiny. After World War I, it became a territory controlled by Britain, Australia, and New Zealand. Even though it was supposed to be protected from exploitation, it became an Australian mining colony. The phosphate was sold cheaply to these countries, fueling their economies but leaving Nauru in a bind. Then came World War II, and things got even worse. Japanese forces took over the island, and it was a nightmare. After the war, though, the phosphate industry got back on its feet and exports hit new highs. But the island was paying a heavy price. Mining ruined much of the land, and environmental problems piled up. Despite the money rolling in, life for the people of Nauru could have been better than you might think. Sure, there were perks like free health care and no income tax, but the island's economy was built on mining, and only some were happy about it. People's health suffers from poor diets and other issues. Still, for a while it seemed like Nauru was riding high. They made millions from phosphate, invested in fancy projects worldwide, and lived the good life. Nauru's financial downfall. Let's rewind to January 2003 when Nauru's phones died. The whole telecommunications system crashed, leaving the island cut off from the world. That meant when the president tried to raise the alarm about the country going bankrupt, nobody outside could hear him. It was a dire situation. So, how did things get so bad in just 20 years? Well, it all started in the 1990s when phosphate exports, the island's primary source of income, started to dry up. By 2001, they were making just a fraction of what they used to. Nauru had this big plan to rely on its savings like a giant piggy bank called a sovereign wealth fund. But by 2004, those savings were nearly empty, worth a tiny fraction of what it should have been. What went wrong? That Nauru made some pretty bad investments. They poured money into failing businesses and bought a hotel in Fiji that they never bothered to fix. Then, they funded a musical in London about Leonardo da Vinci's love life. But it was a flop. As if that wasn't bad enough, some shady stuff was going down too. Government workers pocketed millions, and the island became a hotspot for shady banking deals. They even sold passports to anyone with a few $1,000s, including some not-so-nice folks. By 2002, the United States had enough and slapped sanctions on Nauru. With their overseas investments tanking and no more dodgy deals to rely on, the government was in serious trouble. They started borrowing money left and right until they ran out of cash entirely by 2004. And that's when things got rough. The economy collapsed, people lost jobs, and essential services like healthcare and fuel became scarce. Some people even suggested abandoning the island altogether. But a strange lifeline appeared when it seemed like all hope was lost. Nauru's economic roller coaster. On August 24, 2001, there's this fishing boat crammed with 438 Afghan asylum seekers, stranded in the middle of nowhere. Thankfully, a Norwegian freighter named MV Tampa comes to the rescue. But when they try to dock at the nearest port, Australia's Christmas Island, the Aussie government says no. Nauru steps in like a superhero, offering to take in these asylum seekers while their cases are sorted out. This whole arrangement, known as the Pacific Solution, was a big deal. Australia promised to help Nauru financially in exchange for housing these asylum seekers. Fast forward a bit, and the regional processing center in Nauru becomes a big part of the island's economy. It's estimated that more than half of Nauru's revenue since 2001 has come from this center. Along with other deals like selling diplomatic recognition and forgiveness of debts, Nauru's economy starts to bounce back from its earlier troubles. But Nauru's future still hangs by a thread. Their economy relies on Australia keeping the Pacific solution going. However, that's not a guarantee with the costs and political headaches involved. If Australia pulls the plug, Nauru could face severe financial trouble again. In 1962, the United Nations warned Nauru about this exact scenario. They said, "Things might look good now, but they won't last forever." And yes, they were right. Nauru's story is a classic example of the resource curse. They had all this phosphate, but they needed to manage it wisely. Without strong institutions and transparent leadership, they were doomed from the start. As rising sea levels threatened to swallow most of the island, Nauru's story reminds us that wealth isn't just about money. It takes careful planning, good governance, and a vision for the future to build a truly prosperous nation. If you found this video informative, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating content like this. Thanks for watching.